Hello and welcome to TCG Time Capsule, the show where we look at the mini trading card games that didn't quite make it and were banished to the bargain bins. Each episode we will be looking at a different card game's history, why it failed, and if it should ever return. Last time we looked at Duel Masters, a beloved card game from the early 2000s that, despite overall being a failure in the West, has become one of the most influential card games of all time. This time we are covering Luck and Logic, a game that was not successful, influential, notable, or very good. But more on that later. Luck and Logic was announced by Bushiroad, makers of Cardfight Vanguard, Schwartz, and Future Card Buddy Fight in late 2015. Which means Luck and Logic will be one of the most recent games we ever cover on this show. In fact, the game is so recent that TCG buzz predates it. In fact, our second episode ever was Dalton and I discussing the announcement of Luck and Logic. Back then we were only doing audio episodes, and we had a lot to learn. But if you're really curious, here's a link. We were decently excited for the game at first, but looking at a video from just over a year after that first one, we were confident that the game was dead. And in particular, my opinion on the game had soured quite a lot. Dalton and I picked up the first 2 trial decks for the game at launch, as well as some boxes. He bought the green Brave Logic deck, and I, the yellow Rene Logic deck, which is where my favorite card for the game comes from. It's actually the cover card. See? I'm going to try to explain the basic premise behind the world of Luck and Logic. Bear with me, it can be a bit confusing. The core concept here is fusion, or to be more accurate, transunion. There are a small number of people born called logicalists, gifted with the ability to reach out and bond with people from parallel dimensions called foreigners. No political commentary, I hope. With the power of their bond, they are able to fuse together into powerful warriors. To put it simply, I have a logicalist, I have a foreigner. Transunion. Was that a good impression?
Yes.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Tying into the card game was an anime. Rather than feature people playing the card game like most shows of related origins, they opted for a more standard action anime in the world of Luck and Logic, focusing on the team of logicalists and their partners fighting beasts from other worlds, invading the human world. It's pretty average as far as anime go. I like many of the visuals, but the plot is pretty cliche. Most reviewers gave it around a 7 out of 10. Let's talk about gameplay. At the beginning of combat, each player sets 6 gate cards on the field face down. Each player's goal is to protect their gates by guarding them with their members and destroy the opponents. Some members can guard only 1 gate, while others can guard multiple at once. The primary action of the game is fusing your logicalists and foreigners together for powerful fusions and steamrolling your opponent. As turns progress, each player adds cards to their level zone, up to a typical max of 4. These determine the levels of creatures you can play and the number of attacks you can make each turn. Now we move on to combat, which is a complete train wreck. I'm going to do my best to try and cover it all, but bear with me, it's a bit of a nightmare. When you attack a gate directly, you always win that battle. But when 2 members fight each other, it becomes a battle of power. The outcome of battle can be influenced in several ways. First is the intercept step, where you can have other members on the board assist in battle by being placed in the intercept zone. Only cards with intercept markers on them can be placed in the intercept zone. After that, you have a second step where both players can increase their power in a system that will be pretty similar to fans of the Dragon Ball Super card game or of Cardfight Vanguard, where you can place cards from your hand that have a logic number on them into the battle zone to increase the power of your member in battle to try and turn the fight in your favor, as well as play tactic cards for additional bonuses. You also have to keep in mind that your member in battle has a limit. This number represents how many cards you can place in the battle zone. If your member has a limit of 3, that means you can only play a maximum of 3 cards. Keep in mind that doesn't count the cards that you intercept with, because those go to the intercept zone, which is separate. This is also where paradox cards are introduced, which are hands down my least favorite mechanic from the game. Each deck is required to have exactly 8 paradox cards in them. They are landscape cards which are played during battle, which make the fighter's power totals completely irrelevant. Instead, when a paradox card is in play, a separate mechanic called Aura determines the winner of battle. I could honestly do an entire video on why this is a terrible idea, but I'll try to keep it brief and condense my hate for this mechanic down to just 3 points. 1. Switching to Aura completely negates the sometimes minutes worth of math both players have to do up to that point. 2. Cards that influence Aura are very conditional, making it very unsatisfying when an Aura battle is won for both players. It doesn't feel like a skillful play, it feels like you just got a lucky combination. 3. Aura is represented by a blue symbol. These symbols do not stack, meaning when you have a card that increases Aura, you have to count each individual symbol in a row and add those potentially 6+ symbols on one card to your total from all other cards played that battle. This system makes it incredibly easy to miscount your Aura total, and makes determining whether switching to Aura in the first place is beneficial to you quite the chore. This entire combat system is far too complex. There's no real flow to it, and it makes matches really drag on when you have to participate in 10+ battles in every single game. Combat should be snappy and easy to understand, especially in a game that features it so heavily like Luck and Logic does. Gameplay-wise, I think the obnoxious combat system did the game a real disservice, but there are several major non-gameplay issues that I feel were even larger factors in why the game died. Let's go over them. First up is what is, in my opinion, the single biggest mistake the game made. Even if everything else for the game was perfect, I think this issue would have still been enough to doom the game. That issue is the manual. Seriously, the manual sheet included in the original 2 starter decks is probably the worst I have ever come across. It's seriously awful. Luck and Logic is a pretty complex game as it is, and this sheet glossed over a ton of details and broke the cardinal rule of card game manuals. Don't be vague. I know plenty of people who had interest in the game but really struggled to master the rules of the game and ultimately gave up. Personally, I came to the game with prior knowledge of dozens of card games and still really struggled. There were plenty of rules I interpreted one way, only to find out weeks later from some Luck and Logic wiki comment that I had been doing them completely wrong, and teaching them wrong. Adding to this, the resources Bushiroad provided for the game were really bare bones. The website has long since been shut down, but looking at it from the Wayback Machine, you can see how it's not much more than product info, some basic news, and the same vague rules from the starter decks. Another turnoff for some people was the overwhelming abundance of waifus. I'm not here to judge, guys, but many potential customers are going to be turned away when 3/4 of a pack of cards are sexualized images of 13-year-old girls. At least when Y-Shorts does it, they're over-sexualized images of teenage girls that you neckbeards already wanted to collect for your basement shrines. Darian! What the... Oh no. Y'all are gross. There were other issues too, like a generally high price point to build competitive decks, poor marketing outside of the anime, and the lack of good premium cards in the first few sets. But we could be here all day, so let's move on. Bushiroad announced on January 23rd, 2017 that they would be discontinuing the English version of Luck and Logic, making it one of the shortest card game runs from a major company ever. A few weeks later, Bushiroad announced that Season 2 of Luck and Logic would take a pretty radical shift. Called Hine Logic, this season features a much more moe art style, more in line with Bushiroad's other properties Love Live and Milky Homes. I'd consider it a spin-off, but it does take place in the same universe as the first series. I'm sure Bushiroad was trying to increase the popularity of the series, but it ultimately failed. The anime received pretty mediocre reviews, and the entire franchise was permanently cancelled within a year and a half. So now we reach the part of every TCG Time Capsule episode where we ask whether this dormant franchise should be revived. The answer for Luck and Logic is... God, no! That's it. That's the script. There's no outro. What the? Oh no. That was your cue.
Alright.